The trial of murder accused Reinhardt Leach has been adjourned to tomorrow in the High Court in Gqeberha. Now, Leach is facing charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder in connection with the killing of Vicki Terblanche. Her estranged husband, Arnold Terblanche, is being tried separately. Now, the third accused, who has turned a state witness, Cullis, is expected to be cross-examined by the defence when the matter resumes. He was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment for his involvement in the murder. SABC News reporter Lerato Fekisi has more for us.
We're broadcasting outside the Gqeberha High Court, where the case of murder accused Reinhardt Leach continues at Gqeberha High Court. Inside court, we heard testimony from third accused turned state witness Cullis about how he is aware and has received death threats while in prison. You understand that he has admitted and pled guilty to charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and also defeating the ends of justice. He testified in court that on 2 occasions he was asked first by Mr. Leach to change his statement, and also promised by Mr. Leach that Mr. Leach, and also Vicki's then husband, Arnold Terblanche, would protect him in jail if he did change his statement. He also explained how during his holding time in the cell, he was asked by Arnold Terblanche, who is accused number 2 in the case, to remove him from his statement. You also remember that yesterday in court, Mr. Cullis gave damning evidence which he alleges that Leach played a critical role, which ultimately led to the death of Vicki Terblanche. In court, he spoke how the initial plan to kill Vicki came from Mr. Leach, who had said at that time that he was asked and instructed by then Vicki's husband to kill Vicki because they were going through a divorce, and as Cullis alleges, she was going to receive 5 million rand, and based on that, Mr. Arnold allegedly asked Mr. Leach to kill Vicki. He then went on to state in court that the initial plan was to make it look like a drug overdose, because he explained in court that at that time he could call himself a drug addict together with another friend called Gqeberha and also Mr. Leach, because at any given time inside Vicki's house they would smoke mandrax, cat, which is also known as an old or cheaper version of cocaine. And at any time they were in the house, they would smoke that. So making it look like an overdose to kill Vicki would have worked perfectly in their plan. He then went to explain that Mr. Leach also had asked him to purchase a gun. Initially, he thought this was for an abalone transaction because he was involved in the business, but later learned that he actually wanted to kill Vicki. Also explaining that how he was shocked that Mr. Leach would want to kill Vicki, saying that at that time he thought that perhaps because they were involved in drugs throughout the previous weekend, it was just perhaps him speaking from a point of overdose. He then went into the gruesome evidence of how Vicki eventually died, saying that on that specific day he was asked to purchase drugs, which he did, which are actually antidepressants. He went to buy those worth of 80 rand. He then explained how inside the house, he alleges, Mr. Leach then took 25 of those and crushed them, put them into Barocco and gave them to Vicki to drink. He was also actually asked critically by the state that at any given time, as someone who is a drug addict, was it normal for someone to be given 25 tablets? And he stated that Mr. Cullis saying that at any time, he even himself, who is a confessed drug addict at the time, could only take 10. So obviously stating that 25 was actually an overdose. He then went to explain how he went into Vicki's room and heard a snoring sound coming from the room, and explained how in the room he found Mr. Cullis and Vicki lying horizontally, and at that time he says Vicki was gagging. He then tried to pull her out. She couldn't walk, obviously highly intoxicated from the drugs, moved her to the spare room and tried to push her on her side to try and make sure the vomit goes out of her mouth and doesn't choke her for what was going to be her planned death. He then went to explain how he tried to shake her leg, tried to shake her up. She opened her eyes, so evidently very much awake, but obviously half drugged and unable to walk and weak. He then explained how he passed out the next day. Mr. Leach walked into the room, obviously very angry. Obviously is also trying to state that Mr. Leach was perhaps insecure to see Cullis allegedly in the same bed as Vicki. He then explained how Leach was disappointed that their plan didn't work out as they had wanted to, asking Cullis why he didn't ensure that she was dead. And then he said, as Mr. Cullis quoted, "Let me go finish her off myself." And then in also very excruciating evidence, he explained how Mr. Leach took a blanket, wrapped Vicki around that blanket, went onto her body, used the strength of his elbows and his wrist to literally smother her with the pillow. Also explained to the court how this time Vicki was still alive because she was screaming, but obviously we cannot able to help herself, and eventually that led to her death. As he went towards the end of his testimony, he spoke about a plan which was conspired by Mr. Leach to throw the body in a deep grave, or shallow grave, in Green Bushes, how that plan came about through the help of Mr. Peanut, who was then an acquaintance of Mr. Leach, and how Vicki's possessions, her jewelry, her laptop, her clothes, clothes were sold to Mr. Peanut, and how eventually her body was dumped in the shallow grave. He explained that he didn't want to be part of that, and if anything, when they went to dump the body, he stood aside. Throughout this testimony, also speaking about how he had tried, even when Vicki was in the bedroom, to make her aware what's happening. Because of intoxicated state, she was not able to hear. He ended off his testimony by stating that in the end he told the police exactly what happened, which then led the police to discover Vicki's bodies, because he took them exactly to where the body was buried, and then that's how Vicki's body was found, how it was then taken to a lab in PE, how it was then an autopsy was done by Dr. Anna Marie Mateus, who had then took the test to Cape Town and later confirmed that from the results, Vicki actually died of a multiple drug intoxication. So in court today, he spoke about death threats he's aware of. He spoke about a plan by Mr. Leach and Mr. Terblanche to try to persuade him to change statements, and saying that they would also protect him, and also to a certain extent Mr. Leach also promised to give him a small holding if he changed his statement, and also ultimately if he did play a part in the killing of Vicki. So tomorrow we'll hear Advocate Jolene, which is Mr. Leach's lawyer, begin her cross-examination of those accused state witness, Cullis at the Gqeberha High Court.